Hello, and welcome to the fifth session for the Public Health Management series and the second Mental Health and Emotional Health session. So this is part two. In part one, we learned mostly about being able to identify our emotions and to be aware of our mental health. And then today we're going to get a little bit more into strategies and a little bit more into trauma, like I promised before. So I just want to do a little bit of a check-in. Again, we do this at the beginning of every session to remind you kind of what we've built up until this point, give you some reminders if you need to go back and add things. So reminder to have your individualized plans out, add to them as you need, add strategies, get your habit trackers. You can go back to session 2, the habit tracking one, and download that resource again if you need it. You can also download there's habit trackers all over if you search on the internet. You can also get them from Amazon. You can also make your own. So there's lots of different versions of habit trackers out there. Managing health, just again, this is your reminder if you meant to, from a few sessions ago, if you meant to, schedule that appointment with your doctor or set something up or be aware of your blood pressure, your heart rate, that kind of thing. Here's a reminder. Then last but not least, a reminder to be using the strategies from the last session on mental and emotional awareness. So using that wheel, the emotion wheel that we talked about, using that thermometer, and then the mood diary. So again, these are just strategies from the past that you might want to add to your plan if you have not already. Today, we're going to be focusing on the mind-body connection, on trauma and stress, wise mind. I'll explain more about that once we get there, and then on some coping strategies. So the first thing I want to talk about is this term called psychoneuroimmunology. So it is the connection between psychology, our nervous system, and our immune system. And basically shows that the body affects the mind and the mind affects the body. So studies have shown that there's a bi-directional line of communication and influence, which means that the mind affects body, body affects the mind. And stress is a good example of that. So when you have increased stress, there's something in your environment that is making you stressed out. It can increase your cortisol levels in your body. The hormones are flowing, which leads to increased inflammation. Inflammation is related to most, if not all, of the ailments, the physical ailments, and it leads to impaired immune system. So this is an example, again, how stress, something that you could be worried about, something that could start, mentally or emotionally, start to manifest into physical symptoms or even disorders such as anxiety, depression, heart attack, stroke, and cancer. So again, the mind can help cure the body. I think a good example of this is the placebo effect. So if you haven't heard of this, it's basically there's some research out there, a lot of research out there actually, but usually when they do research on, let's say, like a new medication, they'll give half of the individuals the actual medication they're trying to see if it's effective. They'll give the other half of individuals a fake pill. So the pill has no medication in it at all, but neither group knows which one they're getting. So the one that's getting no medication, but they are taking that pill, they're thinking that they're getting the medication, and then it sometimes does result in a placebo effect where they actually feel better or similar to the group that actually did get the medication. So again, that's an example of the mind affecting the body. We have eustress. This is what is known as the good stress or the positive stress. So this is a little bit of stress that motivates you to do something. So it might be that little bit of stress at work that motivates you to complete a task or complete a project or go for that promotion. So that's known as good stress, something that is a just right challenge. It's a little challenging, but definitely doable for you. And then there's a reward. So then the negative stress or the distress section, there's lots of different kinds of stress within there. But this is the stress that over time starts to impact your health in pretty serious ways. It can elevate your risk of major medical problems, such as, like we said in the last screen, heart attack, stroke, diabetes, renal disease, and then a lot of mental health disorders and poor emotional health overall. So acute stressors are things that are happening short term. So you might be really, really stressed out right now because you just had a really negative interaction or fight with somebody that you care about, and that's what's going on in your life right now. So that's something that's happening right now, but it might not be like a long-term thing. Or you are stressed because you're in the process of moving. This is really a stressful event, but again, it's not going to last forever. That's acute stress. Acute stress can still affect health in a negative way, both mental health and physical health. Then we have chronic stress, which is more long-term stress that is weeks to months to years. This is when you're in a situation that is constantly putting that stress on you. It could be a bad relationship, a toxic home environment, homelessness, poverty, poor sleep patterns. So again, chronic stress is when there's an ongoing trigger to the stress that does not stop. Acute stress, there's the stressor, but it does go away. The episodic stress that you see under the acute stress, that is when somebody has multiple acute stressors kind of like back to back. So it almost feels like chronic stress, but they're different triggers. So this usually happens for people that take on too much at once. They take on a lot of roles. They're stressed about this thing one day, then the next day this thing comes up. So there is a version of acute stress that's episodic. So there's an episode of this kind of stress, then this, then this. So it seems kind of back to back. Again, this is common when you're someone that takes on too much. And then over here on the right-hand side, I do have just a picture of Americans' top sources of stress. According to this poll taken in 2022, you'll see at the top, money is a big stressor for a lot of people, then work, mental health, physical health, family, etc. So again, just some examples of pretty common stressors that could be in your life currently. And then I just have a slide on signs of stress. Most of us, well, I shouldn't say most of us, a lot of us know when we're stressed. We can tell that we're reactive or getting angry or just feeling super tired, short-tempered. We don't have as much patience for things. But unfortunately, most of us don't know we're stressed until that point, until we're reacting or we're kind of lashing out on loved ones or any of these signs actually you see in here: irritable, angry, lack of interest, anxious, headache. So we start to feel these things, upset stomach, gut problems. That's a common one too. Then we are like, okay, we're stressed. And then even then, some people don't do anything about it. So it's important for us to talk about the signs of stress, even though it might seem obvious. To some people, it's not, first of all. And second of all, even if it is obvious, if these signs are like, yeah, I knew this, it's important to, one, be able to know, okay, I'm starting to feel stressed because I'm feeling X, Y, Z. And then you can know, what helps you when you're feeling stressed. Let's go do that thing. It also helps to start to make a comprehensive health plan where you implement some coping strategies that serve as preventative measures. So they could prevent you from getting to the point where you're feeling all these things and having symptoms as strongly. So I promised we would talk a little bit about trauma. So defining trauma. Trauma is a pervasive problem, results from exposure to an incident or multiple events that are emotionally disturbing or life-threatening, with lasting adverse effects on the individual's functioning, mental, physical, social, emotional, spiritual well-being. So on the screen too, from traumainformedcare.org, there are some experiences that may be traumatic, and this is not all inclusive, so there are more that are not on the screen. But there's physical, sexual, emotional abuse, childhood neglect, living with a family member with substance use disorder or mental health issues, unexplained separation from a loved one, poverty, racism, discrimination, oppression, and violence within the community. So again, these are different examples of trauma, and also trauma is a very personal thing. Again, it's exposure to something that you are perceiving as emotionally disturbing or life-threatening. I bring up trauma, especially as it relates to talking about people that have been incarcerated, because there's a lot of research to show that the incarcerated population has significantly higher trauma than the general population. And this is even before incarceration. So this ACEs is called Adverse Childhood Experiences. It's a 10-question questionnaire. You can look it up and take it yourself if you want. Just be aware that you are going to be looking at traumatic events and probably revisiting some traumatic experiences in your past if you have had them when you take the test. So there's 10 questions, and each are different versions of trauma. And so trauma that occurred before the age of 18. And so 61% of the US population has had at least one ACE, whereas 84% of the prison population has had at least one ACE. So there you see a pretty big difference between having one childhood experience that was traumatic for the general population to the prison population. But then where it gets even worse, as far as disparity and disproportionate effects of trauma, only 12% of the general population has had 4 or more of those negative childhood experiences, while almost half of people who are incarcerated have had 4 or more. Now, this is really important. 4 or more ACEs is kind of like the magic number, but not in a good way. So if you've had 4 more ACEs, 4 more adverse childhood experiences or traumatic events that happened when you were under the age of 18, such as abuse, neglect, domestic violence, substance use in your home, that kind of thing, you are more likely to experience a lot of negative health outcomes later in life. It could be mental health related or physical health related. So up here on the screen, you'll see here that it gives you some examples of some of the effects of having 4 more ACEs. So you're more likely to have lung disease or adult smoking. You're more likely to use substances. You're 14 times more likely to attempt suicide, more likely to have sex before the age of 15, more likely to be depressed, anxious, and to develop a bunch of different problems like you see here, disability, social problems, etc. On the next screen, I show some more statistics that closely relate to the justice system. So if you've had 4 or more ACEs, so you have had multiple traumatic experiences as a child, you're more likely to do a lot of things that are risky behavior. You're more likely to be drinking. You're 11 times more likely to smoke marijuana, 16 times more likely to have used crack cocaine or heroin, 14 times more likely to have been a victim of violence within the last year, and 15 times more likely to have committed a violent act within the last year. This is, again, linked to trauma in your childhood, and then 20 times more likely to have been incarcerated at one point in your life. Again, showing you these statistics is meant to show the correlation between trauma and adverse health effects later in life, trauma and risky behavior later in life, and trauma and likelihood that you will be incarcerated later in life. This is very important because as we get into coping skills, I will share more information on what it means if you've had more trauma, what that might look like for you. And it also raises a lot of issues with the way that our system is set up. I do not believe that it is set up in a way that tends to the needs of individuals. If we're having more individuals that have had more trauma than the general population inside a facility, you would, if you're incorporating some trauma-informed care principles, you would be trying to make that person feel more safe. And the system currently is not set up that way, although I think people are becoming more aware of the need for it. So again, more trauma equals more likely to have a lot of adverse health effects later in life, both mental health and physical. So with trauma, our fight or flight system may be more reactive than others. So what fight or flight is, if you're not sure, and even freeze is another option. So that is when there's a trigger in the environment, something alarming, something that's kind of setting you off. You either have the response of fighting, you put your fist up and you're like, I'm ready to take this thing. And you go at it. The flight response is when you run away, you hide, you avoid, you try to get away from the trigger. And then the freeze response is you feel paralyzed. You can't really move. You don't do anything, kind of stop dead in your tracks. So that system is more reactive if you've had a lot of trauma. And so because of that, you have to work harder at calming that emotional brain, reassuring yourself that you are okay and not in a life-threatening situation every time that you feel that reaction, and the reaction feels strong enough to make you feel like it's a life-threatening situation, even if there is no threat in the environment. So again, it's more reactive. It's picking up more things and perceiving more things as threats that may not be threats because of past experience. So I will say before I go into that screen, that reactive nervous system, it was meant to protect you at one point in time. So you're being reactive because you're paying more attention. You're paying more attention to your surroundings and looking for danger. And so it's perceiving a lot of different things as danger when in reality it might not be dangerous, but your brain, body, whatever time that you develop these kinds of overactive nervous system responses, it was meant to protect you, to look out for danger and to be able to respond to it. And that's how that's linked with trauma too. So then what I want to talk about that goes into this whole emotional mind thing is called the wise mind. So the wise mind is a blend between emotional mind over here and reasonable mind. So the emotional mind is that kind of like really reactive response that like, I feel this thing and then I react. You're reactive, you're defensive. You don't have time to think before you respond. You just respond quick. Then the reasonable mind is more about what makes sense. It's very black and white, very, you ignore emotions or suppress emotions and you make decisions based on logic or fact. So when we have an emotional mind, things can look chaotic because you can be reactive, overreactive even. So things can look chaotic. You can get yourself into trouble and overreactive situations that lead to outcomes that you wouldn't have decided for yourself if you had the rational, reasonable mind to be able to calm yourself down in that situation or talk yourself out of reacting a certain way. In the reasonable mind, we don't want to be too like all reasonable mind either though, because in that version, you could be seen as very rigid. And we want to have a nice blend. We want to balance. We want to honor our emotions, but also strive to act rationally. Have the option to decide how we want to respond to something. So you could still be feeling those emotions of hurt, anger, whatever, but you have enough balance to be able to think about how you want to proceed with the situation rather than just reacting. So this is our mindful, wise mind approach. Now, this is the normal sequence of events for trigger all the way to your response, so your behavior. So there's something in the environment that makes you upset. So we'll use, let's say my partner says something to me that makes me really upset. And so the emotions that I start to feel, I'm angry, I'm hurt, I'm sad maybe. The thoughts I could be thinking about might be like, okay, yes, I do feel these things. Maybe they didn't mean it like that. Maybe I should try to respond this way and see what happens or what they say to that. And then that leads to the response. However, when we have overreactive systems, and even, people just with anxiety, even if you haven't had a lot of trauma, if you have anxiety, you're going to be more sensitive and you're going to be more emotion mind focused. So the emotion is going to seem like it's clouding that thought. See how I tried to put the thought kind of hidden in the background here, because it feels like you're just going from event to emotion to response. It feels like you don't have time to think about how you want to respond, kind of like the example I gave. And in this case, with that example, my partner says something upsetting. I feel this really, really strong emotion, and then I respond by yelling back or trying to hurt them back. And maybe if I would have had the time to think about it, I maybe wouldn't want to hurt them back. I maybe wouldn't want to say something like that. I might be able to consider that there might be another reason for what they're saying, or they didn't mean to say it in the way that they said it. So, but in order to get that thought piece in there, if you are someone that reacts quickly or overreacts to certain things, which a lot of people do, we have to learn how to calm that emotional mind so that thought and the rational and reasonable mind has space, because emotional mind is very, very strong. When it kicks in, it's really strong, and especially if you've had trauma or anxiety, it's stronger and more sensitive, and then it clouds thought. So you're not able, when you're having really high intense emotions, you're not able to use your brain and think through things rationally as you would if you weren't feeling that emotion so intensely. You're not able to rationalize, you're not able to talk yourself out of it if you're feeling so emotionally charged. So what do we have to do? This might be familiar to you from the last presentation. What we did last time was we identified emotions in the first place. So we want to know, what am I feeling? I'm going on off my example. If my partner says something upsetting, feeling angry, I'm feeling hurt. Okay, be able to feel into those emotions. And then this is the part we're going to focus on today, is using strategies to calm that emotional brain to enable us to integrate it with that rational side, so that we can have the wise mind balanced approach, and take on challenges in the way that we want to, and be able to have a choice about how we're reacting rather than feeling like our emotions are driving us. And then being motivated is a big part to make the choices about how we want to behave rather than acting on habits. A lot of what we talked about in the habit one, habits are the way that you react to things, the way that you think about things, the way that you behave. This can be in these situations as well. Someone says something upsetting, you yell at them. Someone says something upsetting, maybe your reaction is you automatically cry. So again, we have automatic responses to things, but you can make the choice to want to change that. And if you do, we're going to talk about some strategies to do just that, to calm our emotional brain down and be able to integrate it better with the logical, rational brain. So we're going to go through some body-based strategies, because again, body-based strategies are important, because when we are, let's say the emotional mind's kind of taking over, it's really strong, I'm feeling this thing really deeply, I'm really angry, I can't sit there and think, I shouldn't be doing this, I should do X, Y, Z. I might be able to try to force myself to think logically, but if the emotion is so strong, I really need to bring myself back into my body. I need to ground myself. I need to do some body-based techniques and get out of that really, really, really strong overtaking emotion. So one body-based strategy is called 5-4-3-2-1. So this one is commonly used with people with PTSD. It's commonly used with veterans. It's also just used if you've had trauma or if you have anxiety. It brings you back into the present moment, and that's why it's called the grounding technique. So I'm going to walk you through it, and then I'm going to have you guys pause it and do it on your own. So how it works is that whenever, you're feeling like you're being overcome with emotions, you're really stressed, you're getting anxious, thinking about things in the future that you feel like you need to calm yourself down. So to get out of your head, out of that cloud of emotions, you want to go through this 5-4-3-2-1. So I'm going to do it right now. I'm going to first acknowledge 5 things that I can see around me. I can see a picture, I can see this light I have over here, my water bottle, my laptop, and my keyboard. Okay. 4 things that I can touch around me. I'm going to say my laptop again, my desk, my blanket, and this piece of paper. 3 things I can hear. I can hear my laptop. I can hear my cat's water fountain. I can hear my voice. And then acknowledge 2 things you can smell. I can smell that candle. And if this one's difficult for you, like it is for me, I can mostly just smell the candle. You might want to look around the room to see if you were to pick that up and try to smell it, could you smell it? So for me, the other thing I'm going to identify is this chapstick, because if I open it and smell it, it does have a scent. So if you're sitting there trying to smell something, you're like, I can't smell 2 things, look around and see what's around you that might have a smell if you pick it up, and then try it to smell it. Last thing, taste. Well, I could taste my water. I have that around me. This one's hardest for a lot of people. If you just ate, you might be able to taste, aftermath of whatever you ate, if you have gum in your mouth, if you're drinking anything. And again, same with the smell thing. If you're not eating or drinking anything, look around and identify something that you would be able to taste if you tried it, and kind of envision yourself tasting that thing. So I'm going to have you guys go ahead and pause your screen right now and try this and then come back. Great. And so you've tried the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I want to remember to show you, this is in the website. This is the resources for this session. So mental health part 2. The first resource in here is the Wise Mind that we just went over. And it actually has a little area that you can interact with. So identifying a time your reasonable mind, emotional mind, and wise mind. And then this is the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding technique that you just tried. So again, you want to try this in a time that you're feeling very stressed. You need to bring yourself back into your body. The next strategy we will do is called box breathing. And this is the next one that is listed in your resource packet as well. Box breathing is just one of many methods of breathing. And breathing has been shown to help bring you back into your body, slow down your heart rate, bring down your blood pressure, all that good stuff. So in this method, it does have you inhale for 4 seconds, hold your breath for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, and then hold it again for 4 seconds. And then you repeat this at least 4 times. I will say, if you have heart conditions, you aren't supposed to do the hold part. So if you have heart conditions, just do inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. So we're going to try this. So inhale for 4 seconds. Hold it. Exhale. Hold it. Inhale. And then you would repeat. See, even I just did one. I feel calm. So again, this is another one you can do to bring yourself back to the moment, to calm down. Again, I told you it brings down your heart rate and your blood pressure. So if your heart's beating fast, you're feeling overwhelmed or stressed about something, this is a really good one. The next one, this one's called anchoring. This one is another ground. All of these so far are pretty grounding. Grounding in the sense that they bring you into the present moment. Mindfulness is a strategy that brings you into the present moment, has you pay attention to what's in time, right here, right now, not in the past, not in the future, but right now. Anchoring could be a form of mindfulness, actually. So anchoring wants you to take a look around you and identify a surface near you to touch. So I'm going to pick this piece of paper. And you want to think through the following questions. So I'm going to walk through this, same as we did the other ones, where I'm going to give you an example and then I'll have you pause and try it on your own. I do really want you guys to be pausing and trying these things, because it is important. You know, sometimes people hear about it and they're like, that seems kind of weird. I've had multiple people tell me, especially the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, they're like, seems kind of weird. But then when you actually try it on your own a couple times, you can start to feel the effects and the benefits from it. So anchoring. I'm going to use this piece of paper. How does this surface feel? Smooth-ish, like a little bit rough. What is the temperature? It's pretty cool. Run your fingers along the surface. What is the texture? Again, it's like smooth, but it's not completely smooth. Like there's a little bit of roughness. If you push on the surface, does it change? Yeah, I can bend it. I can rip it. If I push on it, it's folding. Is it heavy or light? Very light. Can you feel the weight in your hands? Yep. And then look at the surface. What's the appearance, color, and texture? For me, I see multiple colors. There's highlighter and there's text font because I printed something. And then once you do this with one object, pick a couple more in your environment and go through the same process. And then even compare to the ones that you did prior. So again, it might seem silly before you try it, but really if you allow yourself to lean into the strategy, give it a try, It is a way to bring your mind to the present moment, take it out of its anxious thought cycle or whatever might be going on, maybe angry thought cycle, and bring you down to a place where you can think clearer and be calmer. And then another strategy, this is called progressive muscle relaxation or PMR. I'm going to show you back to the resource that was provided. I included a script. So PMR is a strategy that it also is known to bring down blood pressure. So again, if that's a goal for you, this would be a great thing to write in your individualized plan as a strategy. It's also something that's used to help people calm down. People do it before sleep sometimes. You can do it sitting in a chair or you can do it laying down. The goal is that you're going to squeeze different parts of your body, and it starts with your feet and walks all the way up to your head. And then you release the tension and you notice that difference between tense and not tense. You can notice tense versus relaxation. And then you can hopefully start to be more aware in your day-to-day, oh, my shoulders are feeling tense, because you're increasing that awareness to your body. So it has you start by taking a deep breath and holding it for a few seconds and then releasing. Then take a deep breath and then releasing. And then again, we're going to go through just a part of this, but it has you move your attention to your feet. You begin to tense your feet by curling your toes, and then you squeeze, keep squeezing, and then release. Notice the new feeling of relaxation. Then you move up to your lower leg. You tense the muscles in your calves. You can do this by pointing your toes and hold them, squeeze, 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 and then release. Again, noticing the feeling of relaxation. So you'll do this, it walks you all the way to your face. I do want to say one thing with this too. If you haven't had enough water today, make sure you've had enough water, because sometimes you can give yourself a cramp if you're squeezing super hard and you're dehydrated. So have water. You should have water every day, but especially if you are going to be trying this one out. Now we're going to flip back. So I have a few more strategies. So we've gone over box breathing, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, PMR, and anchoring. And then a few others that are definitely worth mentioning are meditation. Meditation it has so many studies out there that shows the benefits of meditation for physical and mental health. There's lots of ways to do it. So some people like to meditate silently. Some people pick a topic that they want to meditate on. Some people like to listen to soundscapes like rain or running water or something like that they put in the background, even white noise. You can go on YouTube and search for a specific topic. So if you're like, I want a 5-minute meditation on anxiety or a 5-minute on inner peace, you can look that up and you can find it on YouTube. There's an app that I really like called Calm, C-A-L-M, and then there's also calm.com. They do have a lot of free ones on there, so you don't have to have a subscription. That's a good app, and it's on a website as well. And then there's also Headspace. So a lot of people like Headspace as well. So again, these are different meditation apps that you can download that you can give a try. I would highly recommend trying meditation and maybe adding it to your strategies, especially if you've never done it before. Give it a go and see how you feel. Mantra is another strategy. So this one, you could pick a phrase, a saying, could be anything, but it needs to be something that means something to you. So for me, the one that I use a lot is just for today. That one is really similar to, you may have heard, like one step at a time, one day at a time kind of thing. For me, I say just for today, and sometimes I fill in the blank. So like, just for today, I can do this. Just for today, I'm going to release anger about this. Just for today, XYZ. That helps me because it helps me to focus on, I just need this moment. I don't need to be thinking about the future and what's going to happen. I'm just bringing myself here and now. And you just repeat it to yourself, something that you feel like you can repeat to yourself in a moment of need. It helps soothe you and calm you down. Journaling is another really, really great strategy. I've had a lot of people have some resistance to this, but then they try it and they're like, wow, that actually was pretty helpful. Especially if you've never journaled in your life. So journaling, you can do this also in many ways. You can just journal your emotions and feelings. Sometimes when I'm really, actually most of the time when I'm really angry or sad, I'll just start journaling. And it's interesting too what you'll find when you start to journal, because your brain might be moving super fast, but your hand can't keep up with how fast your brain's going. So it automatically forces you to slow down a little bit, and then that alone can help you process some of those emotions. And the other form of journaling, there's lots of forms of journaling actually, but one other form I want to talk about is similar to gratitude journaling, which you may have heard of, where you make lists of things that you're grateful for that day. I think gratitude journaling is amazing, and there's research again to show how that's effective in changing the way that you think. Same thing with this. So this is called a self-esteem journal. This is a strategy that's similar to gratitude journaling, where it gives you prompts for each day, but they're more focused on you and what you're proud of yourself for, or something positive that you did or interacted with that day. So for Monday, for example, it says something I did well today, today I had fun when, and I felt proud when. So each day has different prompts. And the important thing is that you take time to really think about those moments and write them in. And even if it was a really bad day, take the time to try to find any little piece of glimmer of joy, anything that you can write down. I think that that's when people make the most progress, is when they're like, I mean, I have people do this that are currently incarcerated, and they say, today was pretty bad. Like there wasn't a lot to look forward to. So I had to really sit with this. I had to go away and come back to it. And they're able to find things that they were proud of, that they felt good about, and things that were interesting even while incarcerated. So I think that's where a lot of growth happens, when you force yourself to try to think about these things a little deeper. And again, it can change the way that you think. You can start to notice more readily, more automatically, the positive things about your day. Then the last one I have here, and this is not all inclusive, there's so many strategies. I'm just trying to give you guys a bundle of them that you could choose from, especially if they're new to you, is just exercise. So exercise is another great one with a lot of research showing, how it helps give you those happy hormones, and it helps prevent some of that stress and kind of buffer against that stress and anxiety. You can use it as a reactive measure. So like if you're really angry, go for a run, that kind of thing. Or you can use it as a preventative measure, which is actually what I do. So I exercise every single morning in the morning before I start my day. That provides me with that little buffer against whatever else I'm going to face that day, because I got some physical activity in the morning. So I'm going to show you the next thing that I would like you to look at in your resource guide. This is called the self-care assessment. So I really like this assessment. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. So this is an assessment where you go through different areas of self-care: physical self-care, emotional, spiritual, professional, and you rate how well or often you feel you do these things. And so you're thinking about, how often do I eat healthy foods? Okay, maybe I do this okay, or sometimes, so give it a 2. And then you put a star, you check this little star box if it's something that you feel like you'd want to improve. So let me just scroll down. Maybe, oh, this is a good one for me. Take time off from work, school, or other obligations. I rarely ever do that. So I'll give myself a 1, and I would put a check in that star box, because it is something that I should probably consider taking time off once in a while for my emotional and psychological self-care. So you're going to go through this entire thing. It's only a couple pages. Physical self-care, go through, rate how often or well you think you do those things from 1 to 3. Then you have psychological and emotional, social, spiritual, and professional. This might look similar to you from that day we did types of health, with all those different realms of health. So again, go through and make sure you put those little stars next to the ones that you feel you could or want to work on. I'll give you a minute to pause and work on that. All right, so you have just completed the self-care assessment at this point. We just went over a bunch of coping strategies. Again, we did 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We did PMR, we did anchoring, box breathing, talked about journaling, mantras, exercise, meditating, all those things. So now what I would like you guys to do is go to your individualized plans or habit trackers and add coping strategies as you see fit, but also I think is the last resource under the self-care. You may remember the thermometers from last time. This one's a little different. So this one has a thermometer over here, has the feelings related to each section. And then I want you to go through this part. So what can you do about it? That was the focus of today. So we focused on how do we feel last session. This session, we want to talk about what are we going to do about it. So I want you to think about all the coping strategies we went through today, and even some of those self-care things that you might have just went through, and add at least one thing to each of these sections. So at least one thing for this top section right here, angry, furious, explosive, steaming. What can you do about it? One thing for frustrated, annoyed, irritable. What can you do about it? So I want you to pause and go through and make sure you really thinking about what would work for you or what you think will work for you, or give yourself multiple options, because this is meant to be kind of like a toolbox, like something that you can visually look at when you're feeling these things, and it will help you decide, okay, well, this is what I'm going to try right now. This is what I'm going to try. Okay, that didn't work. I'm going to try this. So you want it to be full ideally, but today, if you can at least put one thing in each category, it can be anything you learned today, and it can also be things that you already do or you think work well for you. After you've done that, I also want you to make a plan to incorporate at least 2 of those self-care activities that you rated low to your habit tracker or individualized plan. So you go back to that plan, add some things under strategies. So for me, I could have added like take 1 day off of work each month, something like that. I might put into my strategies or make as a goal for myself in my individualized plan. I could even add it to my habit tracker. So today you want to have that thermometer at least partially filled out, and then you want to add at least 2 things from that self-care assessment to your activities on the habit tracker or on the individualist plan, or both. So again, each week we're adding to previous weeks. So we are adding to our plans, we're adding to our habit tracker, we're building off of our foundational knowledge and working towards health. And practice is important. So just because something didn't work for you one time does not mean that, just give up on it totally. I would encourage trying everything at least once, but it usually does take a couple times and a couple different kinds of scenarios to know, okay, this works for me when I feel this, but maybe not as well when I feel this. And then I just want to let you guys know, sleep is our next session. One of my favorite topics to talk about. So I look forward to seeing you guys there, and don't hesitate to reach out if anyone has any questions. Thanks.